Good morning. Can I ever eat pork? You already have an answer? There's certain words that as Yidden, we don't say. Jewish people avoid saying it, or it's a type of term that is repulsive. It's a word that expresses the ultimate of unkosher. And that is the idea of a pork, a pig, not a pork, pig. This animal, the chazer, is considered to be the prototype of unkosher. When you want to describe an unkosher animal, what do you choose? You say, it's the chazer. When you want to describe something which is so unkosher, you say, it's chazer today. It's really unkosher. It's a pig. And today I want to talk a little bit about this animal and our relationship to it, or lack of it. And is there any possibility or opportunity that we'll be able to maybe taste a little bit of the pig at some point? Now, it's something which it's very unkosher, as I mentioned, even in Eretz Yisrael, which is not necessarily a government abiding to all religious laws yet. However, when it comes, there's a prohibition. You can't raise pigs unless it's a non-Jewish town. And there's some exceptions to that law in Israel today. But it's something which is generally accepted. Even someone who perhaps is not keeping kosher yet fully, but they have certain lines they won't cross, and they say, I'm not going to have a pig. I won't have pork. I won't have ham. Even though it's not any worse to have the piece of ham versus milk and meat, but the concept, what this represents is this is the epitome of unkosher. And people are very careful not to eat it. We don't even say, there's a term in Gemara, in Baba Kama, where instead of using the word chazer, which is the Hebrew term for pig, we say davar acher, it's something else, the other thing. We're somehow avoiding using this term of pig, of something which is unkosher. So in this parsha we have the laws of kosher and unkosher, specifically which animals we're allowed to eat. It's interesting. Torah doesn't say these are the forbidden animals. Torah says these are the kosher animals. It's a chidush, it's a novelty, it's something unique. Really you shouldn't be able to eat any animals. These are the ones that you're allowed to eat. It's the exception, so to speak, to the rule. But Torah gives us two symbols, two signs, how we could know if something's kosher. The animal has to chew its cuds, which is a process of digestion, where kosher animals, they take the food inside, it goes into their stomach, it comes back up, they chew it again, a multi-chewing process called chewing their cuds. If they do that, then it would be considered kosher. Only if it also has the second symbol, which is split hooves. So split hooves is very easy. You take a look at the animal, you can see if it has split hooves. But kosher, if it chews its cuds, that's a lot more complicated, and you have to study the animal, and you have to know what it does, and so on. There's no such thing as half kosher. You're in or you're out. If the animal has only one of these signs, only chews its cuds, or only has split hooves, then it's not kosher at all. It's not semi-kosher, it's not partial kosher, it's completely unkosher. And because the chazer, the pig, has only one of these signs, it only has split hooves, but it does not chew its cuds. Therefore, Torah tells us it's not kosher. Okay. Now, there's a commentary, the Ur HaChaim HaKadosh, the Holy Ur HaChaim, who says a fascinating thing in this week's parsha. And he says there's going to come a time when Moshiach comes, and the chazer is going to be kosher. You will be allowed to eat a pig, pork. And he says not only is it a fact, it's a medrash, but if you look at the name chazer in Hebrew, it's from the same word as chazara, returning, which means it's going to return to a state of kosher. Right now it's not kosher, but it's temporary. And when Moshiach will come, when the world reaches a era of geula, when it reaches a state of perfection, then we will be able to eat the pig. This is what the Ur HaChaim tells us, that no worries, there will come a time, hopefully very soon, Moshiach is coming, we will be able to eat from this chazer, we will be able to have the davar acher, the pig. Now, there are many commentators that disagree with this. Okay, the Yefei Toyar says that there's no such medrash. He actually says a commentary on Medrash Rabbah, Vayikra Rabbah, and he says there's never such a medrash. It's some kind of misunderstanding, and there's no such halacha. He disagrees. There'll never come a time when the chazer will be kosher. Okay, that's one opinion. Another opinion is the Radvaz, who says there is such a medrash. It's true. There is a source that says that the chazer will return to an original state. It's going to, not original, but it's going to get a kosher status. But it doesn't mean literally a chazer. It means certain enemies of the Jews, Edoim, who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, they're going to come back. They're compared to a chazer, to a pig. They're going to come back to a better state. And they're not only going to be friends with us, they're going to help us rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So the term that a pig will become kosher, that the Medrash tells us, which applies after Moshiach comes, that Advaz says it's not literal for an animal, like Orach Chaim learns, but it is a metaphoric concept that will come a time when the enemy of the Yid who destroyed the temple, the Beis Hamikdash, will come back and not only not be our enemies, but they're actually going to help us to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. I will say, however, that the Rebbe in Likutei Sichos, in Chelek Chavtes, volume 29, there's a footnote there where he does bring the Orach Chaim, and it's clear that the Rebbe includes this, that there's something which we do associate with and we do hold by, if you will, that when Mashiach comes, the Chazer will be okay. Although there's different opinions, it seems that the Rebbe goes by what the Orach Chaim says, that there will come a time when it's literal, and it will be available for eating. Question is, why specifically a Chazer? Why is this the animal that we say, if you're going to be in a good mood and you're going to allow other people into the club, right? You're making other animals kosher. Why did you choose specifically the chazer? It doesn't say that about any other animal. Especially that we say, the chazer, the chazer has a name which means to return. And there's something about this animal that this animal is going to be kosher when Mashiach comes. Why don't we say that about all other animals? Why did we choose specifically this one? And if you think about it, this is worse. Because this is the animal that we describe as, unkosher is a chazer. Why is this the one that we say it's going to be okay? If you're choosing any animals, maybe take the animal that's not so unkosher. Maybe take the animal that's not the prototype throughout the generations, throughout all the Jewish people. To describe unkosher, we use this term pig. So if there's an opinion that the pig will become kosher after Mashiach comes, why only the pig? And by the way, just for a moment, why is this animal the one that became the worst? What did the pig do wrong that we say this is the animal that is unkosher, the most unkosher? Pig, no way, no way. So there's the Gemara in Baba Kama, which tells us that when the Beis Hamikdash was being destroyed in the time of the Second Temple, they had a siege on Yerushalayim, and the Jewish people could not get out, and nobody could get in, and we were running out of animals. Every day in the Beis Hamikdash, we were bringing a carbon tamid, the animal that we brought every single day in the morning and in the afternoon. It's called tamid, which means constant, consistent. It's always. It doesn't depend on our mood. It's a expression of our dedication to Hashem. We would bring this animal in the morning. It says a sheep in the morning and a sheep in the afternoon. Now we're running out of sheep. So what did the Yidden do? The Yidden made a deal with some non-Jews that were living outside of Yerushalayim. And they said, we're going to lower to you a bucket over the wall with a bucket, some kind of a chest filled with gold. Take out the gold, put in 2 sheep that we need for our offerings, and we'll lift it back up over the wall and we'll have our offerings. So although nobody could get into Yerushalayim, there was this exchange going on. Jewish people were paying tremendous amounts of gold to receive these 2 sheep to be able to bring the carbon offering, the carbon tamid, the tamid offering. So one time, the enemy, the Romans, found out that something's going on here. There was an older person who knew a little bit how the Jews operate and what the secret of our survival was. And he told them, as long as this carbon is being offered, you'll never destroy the temple. It has such a protection. The consistency, the dedication that the Jewish people have every single day. It doesn't matter if it's Yom Kippur or if it's simple Tuesday. They always bring this offering. This protects them. And if you don't stop that, you'll never destroy the temple. So they got wind of it. And when the Jewish people, the next day, they lowered down this big chest with gold hoping to receive the 2 sheep in exchange, they sent up a pig. And this pig, it inserted its feet, so to speak, in the wall. And at that moment, there was a tremendous commotion. There was a shake, and the rest was downhill. Okay, so the pig is seen as that animal that essentially was the last straw to bring about the destruction, in a technical sense. Up until that pig was raised over the wall, the destruction could not happen. That's one explanation that we say from the Gemara. That's why we look at the pig. It's not less kosher than a horse. Okay, it's just it has that symbol because that brought about the churban, that brought about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. That's number one. A second reason why we view the pig as so negative is because it's the only animal that only has one symbol of split hooves. Okay, there are many animals that chew their cuds, but they don't have split hooves, which you have to have both to be kosher. But the pig has split hooves and doesn't chew its cuds. Why is that so unique? Because it creates an impression. It tries to be fake. It tries to fool us, and it shows us its feet. The concept of a pig, if you walk by and you see the feet, you say, oh, it's split hooves. No problem. It could be kosher. You don't know necessarily that it doesn't chew its cuds. It's one thing if you're not kosher. It's one thing if something is not perfect. But when you're faking it or you're misleading or you're trying to fool someone else and say, oh, it's kosher, you're deceitful, that's worse. It's okay if it's not kosher. You don't have to be kosher. But don't fool, the animal doesn't have to be kosher, but don't fool everyone and try to create an impression that it is kosher. So because of these 2 reasons, that this is the animal that was brought over the wall of Yerushalayim and that stopped the Korban Tamid offering, and because it's an animal that has the characteristic that it's fooling, it's faking, it's trying to create an impression that it's kosher when it's not, it's deceitful, that's perhaps why this became the prototype of unkosher, although again, it's not less kosher than other non-kosher animals. Okay. Either way, we still have the question, why is this animal one that is going to be kosher when Moshiach comes and no other animal will? Okay, why the chazer? By the way, welcome to all those that are watching online. You can ask any questions, put your comments in, subscribe to the channel. The Orach Chaim that says this, he answers the question. And why is it that the chazer, so the pig, has this uniqueness that it's going to become kosher, specifically this one from all animals, when Moshiach comes? First of all, he says like this. The Torah tells us, V'hu geira lo yigor, and it, or he, doesn't chew its cuds, which implies the current status is that it doesn't chew its cuds. But there will come a time when the animal will start chewing its cuds. Why is it not kosher? Because it only has one of these 2 symbols. It only has split hooves. But it's going to have, it's going to chew its cuds as well. It doesn't do it yet. But the Orach Chaim learns that when Mashiach will come, this animal's nature will change. And it'll start regurgitating this food in the sense that it's now going to be a kosher animal. So it's not that we're saying unkosher is kosher. It's that it's going to go into that category because it's going to change its nature. The animal will now behave in that sense. It's going to have the kosher characteristic. Now, we still have the same question. So why the chazer? Why is that the animal which is going to change its nature? And somehow, after the whole Golus and thousands of years that we're waiting for Moshiach to come, now this animal chews its cuds. Why doesn't the horse change its nature? Why doesn't any other start to have split hooves or whatever it may be? Why is the chazer specifically the one? In other words, the explanation is good, but nonetheless, why was this animal chosen? So the Rebbe talks about this, and he teaches us a tremendous lesson that you can learn from the pig in a positive sense. Okay, what do feet represent, and what does chewing the cuds represent? The pig is the only animal, as I mentioned, the only animal that has one of these, has the split hooves symbol and does not chew its cuds. You have animals that chew their cuds that don't have split hooves, but the pig is the only one that has the split hooves and doesn't chew its cuds. Its feet are okay. The upper part of its body, the digestive system, and higher up, that's the part that's not kosher. And the Rebbe says like this: split hooves represents your feet are in the right place. You're doing the right things that you have to do. As far as action is concerned, you're in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time. Your mind, you don't necessarily understand why you're doing it. You're not in tune 100%. You don't feel like you're doing it. You're not excited about it, right? You're not happy, perhaps. And it's a problem. It's not kosher. But at least the feet are where they're supposed to be. At least the legs are going to do the mitzvah, to help the person out, to fulfill Hashem's desire, whatever it may be. You're doing what you need to. And that's a tremendous quality. Very often we make the mistake and we say, if I'm not there yet, if I'm not in my mind or in my heart, I'm not going to do it. Right? We have the famous example of charity. Someone came to the Rebbe once and he said, I want to stop giving charity because I'm not really giving it with a full heart. I'm not so sincere when I give it. I have ulterior motives. So we looked at him and he said that the recipient is very sincere in the receiving it. That's quite emes. Okay, and of course, the Gemara tells us that what's the example of a mitzvah which is not lishma and it's still tremendous. It's not for the sake of its own doing, having a side reason, whether it's to feel good or for fame or for whatever else. It's still a mitzvah and it's to still be done. And he gives the extreme example that if somebody was going home from the marketplace and they lost their loaf of bread or they lost their money, and they not only did they not give it to the poor person, they're actually upset that they lost it. They feel bad. And it turns out that somebody found it unintended. They found it and they benefited from it. It was a poor person. You get rewarded. Not only didn't you not do it for the right reason, you didn't even try to do it for any reason. The concept of the pig and the positive side of it, the reason why it's going to become kosher, specifically this animal, when Moshiach comes, is because the split hooves represent action. They represent going to do something. The part that actually matters in the practical sense of fulfilling a mitzvah, that it has. Okay, deep inside, the chewing, it's not there. It doesn't really connect with it. It represents a person who doesn't necessarily feel so good about doing that mitzvah, right? But he's there. He is doing it. And if you're doing it, in the end, it could be turned around. If you're doing it in the end, you'll come around, and hopefully you'll start feeling it as well and meaning it as well. You know, if you're very kind to somebody a lot, you'll develop kindness. Okay, if you smile a lot, you'll develop happiness. You'll feel more joyous. Okay, if you're going to do the mitzvah, even though you don't feel like it or you don't connect with it, okay, you don't necessarily connect with it, but you are still doing it, and eventually, hopefully, you'll come to connect with it. Hello, Shurik. Hello, Eddie. The idea is that that's why it's going to become kosher, because it's in the right place now. It's practically it's in the right place. It's about getting it to feel the right way. Okay. Why is action, or why are the feet so important? So this Shabbos is, in addition to Parshas Shmini, it's Parshas Parah. Parshas Parah is a very fascinating topic. It's a mitzvah which Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, the wisest of all men, he said that I was able to figure out the reasons for the other mitzvahs, or at least some explanation for the other mitzvahs that we have. But this commandment of a red heifer, a red cow, I don't understand it. I couldn't understand it. The wisest of men couldn't figure it out. What's the idea? Why is it so unique? So the background to this mitzvah is as follows. A person who becomes ritually impure, it's called tamei. Somebody who is in the same building under the same roof as a corpse, a dead body, or they touch it, they become impure. And the way to become pure was a special process of taking a red cow. By the way, this is a process which was done only 9 times in history. And it's going to happen again. The 10th one will be when Moshiach comes, over a span of about 1,400 years. They had 9 of them. But the concept is that we take this cow and it gets offered on it gets completely consumed, burned up completely, and then part of its ashes gets sprinkled. It's a whole recipe, how it's put together with water from the shileach. It gets mixed together and it gets sprinkled onto this person on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and it gets pure. In general, offerings in the Beis Hamikdash, offerings in the temple, go into 2 categories. There's a category called oila and a category called shlamim. Oila is the animal which the offering gets completely consumed on the altar. It's so holy, it goes completely to Hashem. Shlomim is an animal that offering that part of it gets consumed on the altar, burnt to Hashem. Part of it goes to the person that's offering it; he gets to eat it, and part of it goes to the koyanim, the priests that are administering this offering. So it's a lower level, if you will, than a carbon oila, because it's such that the hide of the animal you could use. It doesn't have to get burnt. You burnt the whole animal, the flesh, the blood, the fats, the bara aduma, we say no. The whole thing is such a holy concept. How does this work? You take ashes from a red cow, and if it had some kind of ritual impurity because you were in contact with a dead body, so wait 7 days. On the third day, sprinkle some of this mixture, and on the seventh day, sprinkle some more. Then go to the mikvah. Then you'll be pure. Well, what's this all about? In general, why do we have a mitzvah that makes no sense? A mitzvah which we can't understand. A mitzvah that even Shlomo HaMelech can't understand. What's the point? Torah tells us, you know what this mitzvah is? It's called Zeis Chukas HaTorah. This is the chayk, this is the law, the statute that you don't understand. It's not made to understand. The human mind can't comprehend it. Why is this such an important principle? Why is this the law of the Torah? So Chassidus tells us there's a certain part to us which has to be dedicated to Hashem in a level that we don't understand, and that we can't understand, and that we're doing things even though we don't feel it's beneficial for me, for the world, for Hashem, whatever it may be. I know that Hashem said so, and that's why I do it. That's a dedication and a commitment that a Yid has to have to Hashem. Of course, we want to feel what we're doing. Of course, we want to understand the reason behind each mitzvah. And when you get it, perhaps there's more meaning to it. And when you understand it, you do it with a different type of excitement, a different passion. But it's your mind. And when your mind understands it, it has a certain limitation. I get it. I know why I'm doing it. Now, I only understand up to a certain limit, right? We're human. The moment that we say, I'm doing this because Hashem said so, and I'm rising above, I don't understand how this works. I don't understand why I'm doing it. Even Shlomo HaMelech didn't understand. The moment that happened, rising above my own self, I'm connected to Hashem on a very deep level. And that's the purpose of a Torah, of mitzvahs. That's the whole idea. Hello, Russ. The concept is, the reason why the pig is going to become kosher again is because its feet has split hooves. It's going to do. It doesn't understand. It represents a person. It doesn't understand, doesn't feel, doesn't get it, but it's doing. And the Orach Chaim says, then, the Rebbe tells us, then it has a chance of coming back. Ultimately, it will have the ability to come back. Let's look at it in a practical sense. A person who's doing something, even though he doesn't necessarily feel why it's important, he doesn't necessarily understand why it's important, but he's doing it because Hashem said so. That's what matters. And ultimately, he'll come around. That's what lasts. Action is the most important thing. There's a concept that the Rebbe says many, many times at Fabrengen, Zamaisa hu ha'ikar. Action is the main thing. Sometimes we're not there yet. We don't feel it. We don't understand why we're doing it, but do the right thing. Okay. How often do couples get together and they get engaged and they get married and they're all on the same page and they feel exactly the same way, they want the same things, and everything is in the emotion to doing the Chumash with Rashi and the text inside. So Parsha Shmini, today is the 6th day, which is Shishi. And the Gutnick Chumash is page 74. Hello, Ricky. So in the parsha, we're talking about the laws of forbidden animals. These are the animals which you can eat, which are allowed to eat from all the animals that are on the earth. And as I mentioned before, it's interesting. Before the flood, which of Noach's flood, we weren't allowed to eat meat altogether. Okay, with the first 1,000 years or 1,500 years of the world, his sons, you are all my messengers to tell the Jewish people the mitzvah of which animals are permissible to eat. Why did they get this reward? Usually in Torah, when Hashem speaks, most laws are said to Moshe. All of a sudden, it's Moshe and Aaron and his sons. Why? Because earlier we learned that on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu, two of his four sons, died. And they were all silent, all share. It's a tremendous merit to be able to share this with the Jewish people, the message of Hashem about kosher. It's a term of life. Because the Jewish people are connected to Hashem and fitting to be holy. Therefore, he separated them from impurity. It's not a restriction. Hashem said it's a standard. It is a restriction, but it's a standard because you're connected to Hashem, because you have this holiness and it's the idea of life. Therefore, I'm giving you these commandments. And to the nations of the world, to the idol worshippers, he did not give them any of these restrictions. And Rashi quotes an analogy of someone who came into a doctor who came in and gave certain restrictions. He gave them because they applied to this person because it's beneficial for them. For someone else, the mashal there is that certain people, the doctor says, don't eat this. But there's other people that are in a situation where they're so not well, it's not going to make a difference. Okay. It teaches us, Torah says, this is the animal that you could eat. Moshe Rabbeinu was holding the animal. This you can eat, and this you can't eat. The best way to teach is visual. It's visual. You take the animal, and you're saying in the desert they didn't have these animals. Well, they had animals for offerings, so there was some kind of maybe they had a traveling zoo. Okay, well, how do they have it?
Where they can eat off tall trees.
Okay, I don't know the answer to that, but they had it.
Okay.
Also in the things that are every type of animal that he was showing the Jewish people what's kosher, or he was showing them insects which are not kosher, that you can't eat it. You may eat from among all animals of the earth. You may eat any animal which has a split hoof, which is completely split into two hoofs, if it chews the cud. It has to have both of these symbols together. Mafresas kitargumes dika, it has to have split hooves. Parsa flanta balaz. It has to have, Rashi explains, the split hooves and chewing of the cuds. Kitargumes, that it puts it in to its stomach. It then it chews it into the stomach, then it comes up out of the stomach, and then it goes back in. And it's it happens multiple times. That's the process of the chewing of the cuds. It gets grounded and broken down very well. There are certain minerals ground. The idea why it's called in Hebrew male geira, because perhaps Rashi says because it follows. Like a term it says about water that it follows through. It was pregnant. That slaughtered. You could just eat it. There's a story with the Rambam. When the Rambam Maimonides was teaching his was first becoming famous, many people didn't agree with his way of teaching, and they questioned if he was legitimate, and it was some kind of who knows what he's preaching. And they some Jewish communities sent a spy. Go to the Rambam's house, spend some time there, and see what's going on. And among the things that he saw, which he was completely puzzled, was he heard him tell the servant, "Go kill the baby cow and bring it. We'll have it for dinner." So kill? Who kills an animal? You have to slaughter it. That wouldn't be kosher. And he later explained to him that this is which Rashi is bringing here, who was the mother cow was slaughtered properly, kosher. But they found within the cow this little this baby cow, and according to Jewish law, it does not. That one does not have to be slaughtered. It's included. Thanks all for joining. Have a great Shabbos.
When the cow was not slaughtered properly.